From the Dallas On Air studios in beautiful Dallas, Texas, this is Fulfilment right here on DallasOnAir.com. And now here's your host, the Vegabomber, PJ Dunn.
Welcome, everybody. It is still season 3, but this time episode 2020 or 22. Let's call it 22 instead of 2020. Almost sounds like I'm trying to talk about the year that's already passed
right?
by 2 years ago. And so today we are in the holiday gift giving season because it is December and it's marching closer to the 25th. So the idea here was, and the question right off the top is, have you ever been gifted a movie by someone who also was a movie buff and they wanted to give you a movie? And then have you ever given somebody as a gift a movie? I mean, you could have got them some expensive shoes, some slipper socks, a Mr. T starting kit, chain, jewelry set, but instead you went with a movie. Well, today what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the movies that we were gifted. And by the way, those of you who received these movies as a gift, did you keep them or did you trade them in at Movie Trading Center to get the store credit to buy that new action figure? Either way, we'll have you tell us later if that really was what happened. But today, my cast of characters that are helping me be here, we have invited back yet again, and it's also by popular demand.
Woo!
Horror Mike is
Howdy,
back.
guys. Howdy.
That's right. And of course, that man that's behind the screen, handling the A and the V, the audio and the visual, and sometimes the DJing and the VJing himself, it's K-Zach.
Greetings and salutations, campers. Welcome to DallasOnAir.com. Happy holidays.
Yes, and I am your movie tour guide, the Vegabomber. So let's get into it. What we normally do, the topic of the show will be the gift-giving part, but what we start with first in the first segment is what we've seen lately. And so there's that wiki. This gives you a sense of what we're watching. If we're watching good stuff or bad stuff, you can tell us in the comment section if that's going on or not. So let me kick it off real fast. What I have seen here recently is a Netflix special. It's a comedy special, they're actually calling it. It came out in September of this year, and it was called Attack of the Hollywood Cliches, starring Rob Lowe himself. So this was a pretty interesting film. It was 58 minutes. Now, actually, I would have liked it, Mike, if this would have been a little bit longer. Like, if it had been 30 minutes longer, that'd have been great. Because then they could have dove in deep as to why this is a cliche a little bit more. Some of them, they kind of went by fast. But some of the cliches you can expect to understand is like the spit out. Whenever someone says something shocking, people always have to go,
The spit take.
right? So that's like one of the cliches. There's always the falling down when the monster's running behind you, the jump scares. There's the angry death sweep where you have to, when you get angry, you have to just knock everything off your desk just to show that you're angry. And Mike,
One of my favorite ones was the Wilhelm scream, because for years, that's a staple. Movie buffs know the Wilhelm scream, and especially if you're a Star Wars fan. And I even learned a little thing or two about it. I overall really enjoyed that special. I enjoyed Rob Lowe in it. I think it did kind of cross some grounds I just have kind of through osmosis have learned just, by looking at behind the scenes of movies. But overall, I almost kind of felt it didn't go in depth enough on some of its topics. It was almost like rapid fire. But I reckon if you really want to learn about movies, I feel like there's so many rapid fire topics, you're going to learn at least something. Even if we were kind of talking before the show, there was a few elements we might not quite have agreed with fully on their interpretation of things.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get to that. But K-Zach, for you, what's a trope that you think of a lot when you think of Hollywood cliches?
Let's see.
So many.
Yeah, definitely the falling down in front of the monster, because it always happens. Just people make dumb mistakes. People make dumb decisions, and I guess the actresses are so top heavy they just fall over.
Right?
I mean, and the running. No matter how fast you run, they're always going to catch up. And it kind of takes me back to there's a kind of a little indie horror film that was made back early 2000s called Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
That's
and
a
it
classic.
shows and it shows how the monster kind of catches up, like he'll run, walk, walk, run, walk, just to make it look like it. No matter how fast you move, he's always right behind you.
Quickly, I guess I'll say my favorite cliche, even though it's a hard cliche, is the scientist that explains everything that you as an audience did not know up to that point. I think only one movie subverted that trope, and that was Cloverfield from like 9 years ago, where he's like, "Yo, you don't know anything about the monster because you're the guy in the background running. Like, there's no scientist to explain anything to you." But that is a trope. If you pay attention to it, you see that trope everywhere.
Oh God,
Yeah,
I saw
you
it
do.
in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Ken
Yep.
Watanabe was Japanese Jeff Goldblum. That's
Just
what I
comes
referred
out
to
of
him the
nowhere.
whole time.
Yes.
Japanese Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, and speaking of that, there's that villain trope where how many times when the villain has the good guy dead to rights, but now they have to stop and tell you all about their maniacal plan and how they put it together. And meanwhile, while the villain is talking about how great he is, Force Awakens smoke or Last Jedi smoke, then all of a sudden the good guys find a way to clip his wings and he can get away, and the villain's cursed once again and has to come back in the next movie and make a sequel out of it to see if he can stop it again.
Yep.
That
And-
villain thing.
And of course, walking away from the explosion.
Yes, the
yeah.
slow walk.
It's the slow.
What was the one that subverted, the one with Mark Wahlberg? The good guys? No, the other guys. Where they walk away, they explode. They're like, "Oh God, that hurts my ears. I can't hear anything."
Yeah.
Why do people do this?
Yeah, or Dark Knight, where Joker's walking away. It looks like it's calmly pounding on the remote, and then boom, like, okay, there it is.
There it is, yeah.
One of the most famous ad-lib moments, and probably one of up there was in cinema.
Absolutely. And it's amazing with these because you also have the romantic movies, right? So always the deep kiss always has to happen when it's raining outside. So remember in Spider-Man, she pulls his mask down, it's raining outside, and he's upside down, and then so the romantic movies always have to have the romantic kiss when it's raining and it's just crap outside behind them, but inside of them is a fire that's burning, and they're going to just kiss. And then this brings me to a controversial one, and that is the white savior trope. Now, in this movie, they tried to say that the Help was one of those, which I agreed. There was a lot to the Help that was that way. But here's where I disagreed. They tried to put Green Book in there and say that was a white savior trope. And so I struggled with this because the movie is about a guy who actually is the bodyguard for a black man. And in fact, when you watch the movie, you see that Mahershala Ali's character, Dr. Don Shirley, saves him just as much as he saves him as his bodyguard.
Yeah.
So I really struggled that they tried to put that in there and make the Green Book a white savior movie because I didn't see it as that he was saving him. You know, Mike, you saw the movie.
A lot of that pinged me too, because I'm kind of trucking along, and they bring that up, and I'm like, I disagree. And then that just kept going on. That movie moves so rapid fire. Man, that is a weird new trend that I think because of the prevalence of like movietropes.com, I forget the name of the tropes that where they bring up tropes and all these things. People are now more aware of it. The most famous one being the Driving Miss Daisy, or the Help being the big dog one, because that is textbook.
And Amistad.
Amistad. These are all textbook elements of 12 Years a Slave. And I think because people are now so aware of these kind of differences, there's less nuance, because I think there's a lot of great nuance. And by the way, I love Green Book. I adore it. And I think a lot of people miss the nuance of the movie because they just say, "Oh, it's that trope. I can't like that trope." Hard disagree on it being put in that trope, even though it has elements of it.
Sure.
I think
Have you seen it,
I, I haven't seen it. Just one
It
of
is a
those-
must see.
It is a must see.
I think the reason why it got brought up was because there was so much controversy around it, because it was an Oscar bait film, because the hashtag So White thing was just being thrown around
That's a
so
good point.
quickly.
Yep.
It really got rolled into that. So regardless of because it was a fairly successful film with the number of awards that it won, that one really kind of circulated because of the wokeness crowd kind of adopting it as kind of one of those take up the banner, fight Hollywood for telling this kind of story.
K-Zax, I agree. That's like I said. There's a lot of elements why I just disagree. I'm sorry, not with K-Zax. I disagree with people bringing it up, and he's right on. Those are other elements on why people keep bringing it up and using that movie, because it was the big one that everyone knew at the time. And I'm just like, man, y'all, this is the wrong pony to hit.
Right, and I think the other
you're
context.
You're looking for things to be wrong.
Yeah, and I think it's because it went up against Black Panther and Black Klansman. And so Spike Lee made the joke, well, it seems like I always lose to these Drive Miss Daisy type movies because the other one, but that was, so that, yeah, there was this piece to say, let's get on this. But what upset me about it, I would just say real fastly, is the fact that, number one, it wasn't meant to be Selma. It was not a story that was told to try to tell us about civil rights history. It was a movie written by the son of the guy who drove Dr. Don Shirley around. So it was more of a hero worship thing because it was like, my dad never drove anybody famous before, but he did drive one guy famous. And then the juiciness of, yeah, it isn't driving Miss Davy. This is a case where the Italian guy, the Italian American New Yorker, is driving around this black American when he's doing this Southern tour. So all of it makes sense of the things that would happen and that you would see happen. But if I'd say people are pretty shallow if they think it was just about him saving his butt from people whenever he was in clubs where they didn't want him. Because as we saw, it was also about family.
Yeah.
And how he was trying to show him, this is how you connect to family. And he was a guy who wasn't connected to his family at all.
I think
so there was some genius in this that was
all this
over.
said. Because everything you said, spot. All this said, you gotta see Green Book, guys. Like,
for sure.
I know a lot of people did, and that's what I do love about it. A lot of people did, but a lot of people put it off because they were like, I don't know. A lot of people said they didn't care. It's got a lot of bad tropes. Just give it a shot. At the very least, you can appreciate a well-told story.
Yes, and before I move on, I'll make
and
one
you've
more.
got top-notch actors in there because you've got Viggo Mortensen, you've got Mahershala. It's a big deal, man.
Absolutely, the funniest comedian going right now, Sebastian Maniscalco, is in there. He plays one of his cousins. But I'll say this is the last piece of this as well, and then I want to hear what you've seen here, Mike. And that's this. Think about it this way, film fans. This is Peter Farrelly doing a serious film. This is a guy that did Something About Mary. He's done all comedies before. What I love is when you read the liner notes, what you find out is someone said to him, I bet you can't do a serious story. And Peter Farrelly said, watch me. And this is genius because when you watch this movie, the way the humor is placed in there, because if it didn't, it would be a very somber civil rights movie for sure. But the way he placed the humor was genius because it didn't belabor the point of how serious the situation was, but it did let you see, isn't this kind of stupid that you couldn't let a black man go to the bathroom in the South, right? So the jokes are genius that are put in there. And again, this is a guy they were telling him, all you do is comedies, but you can't do a serious film.
I didn't know that. I do think that's interesting. That's like now the third or fourth time. It feels like comedy, guys who come from comedy really do spread out. Like when you have that timing of comedy, I didn't know that. You got Jordan Peele in the horror and he went into drama. Oh, that might be a show idea. That might be a show idea.
Dying is easy. Comedy is hard. That's an old trope. But I mean, if you ever take a look at some of those Key and Peele sketches, Jordan Peele's got a real horror bent in a lot of what he does.
Some of those, the joke being they set up this tense situation, and it's both of those dudes were. Yeah, Key and Peele was just like a Chappelle show was this like lightning in a bottle. Show that came and went exactly when it needed to.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's good. So, hey, let's move it on to you, Mike. What have you seen since we last talked to you?
Left for me, and I was the new Amazon show. I've seen every episode of The Wheel of Time. It's an Amazon Prime exclusive. It's based on a book series. Originally, I didn't care about it. I'm super normie when it comes to the fantasy genre. I like Lord of the Rings and Witcher. But I always feel like the fantasy genre gets really in the weeds. It's just like you don't know what a class F orc does. Oh man, I guess you can understand the story. It always feels like that. I always feel like I'm on the behind the eight ball kind of speak on these shows. And I can safely say that I didn't get that issue from Wheel of Time. Oh, I should explain. Wheel of Time is a story of there is a destined that this person will be reincarnated, the dragon, who will basically bring about the end time. And these prophets have narrowed it down to it's probably one of these 5 kids. Now, because of their morals, they can't just kill all 5 of these kids. They have to figure out which one it's going to be and then basically stop that kid from reincarnating into this deity.
Okay.
And it's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. Acting solid. Nothing really blew me away. I wanted to use it to bring up an issue that I think is going to be in the kind of the pop culture spaces, because a lot of people are noting that like Wheel of Time, the most recent like Cowboy Bebop adaptation on Netflix, the Cowboy Bebop adaptation got like canceled after one season. I'm noticing that the streaming service is going to be both a boon and a little bit of a disservice to cinema and just pop culture going forward, because it's becoming a hard meritocracy. If you're not knocking it out of the park, you're getting rotated out quick. And I don't see a show like Wheel of Time lasting one season, or like Cowboy Bebop, which I kind of rage quit. I just didn't care for it. It got rotated in one season, and I'm both afraid and excited, because what it means is that meritocracy aspect is going to really shine through movies. We're going to get a lot of creme de la creme products, movies, and television. But what I'm afraid is those smaller stories, like a lot of Taylor Sheridan's work, a lot of indie stuff may get dropped by the wayside because, well, you didn't do big numbers, out you go.
Yeah.
We may have a more expedited problem that we have in cinema right now, because if you're not a AAA movie or a Marvel film, you're rotated right out the back. And I watch Wheel of Time, and the show really does nothing wrong, but it does nothing great. It's just right middle of the road. When I watch The Witcher, which I think is a fair 1-1 comparison, I was blown away by how it was told, Henry Cavill's acting, the special effects. These are all 9 out of 10 elements. And then I watch Wheel of Time, and I'm like, oh, this is like a solid 6. Like, does nothing wrong. It exists. I watch it because I can spend time with my mom, and it's a simple enough show she gets it without being too confused, and I move on. But I look at this and I say, if I were to show you this show and then I would show you Game of Thrones in its early seasons, it wouldn't even be a fair fight. You'd be like, that's not a fair comparison. So I'm curious what you think, but I think we're seeing a beginning. It's been happening. We're seeing an expedite of streaming shows just getting rotated through. Like, I'm hearing every day of a show getting canceled, renewed, canceled, just canceled, renewed. And I'm unsure what y'all thoughts are. And that might be a conversation for a more dedicated show. But
sure. Well, I think the short shrift is this is going to happen. It always happens. And the more content you put out there, the more that's going to get shifted. Because not all of it's good. Sometimes the motivation is, we got to put this out there because there's a movie. We got to put this out there because we want this new toy. We got to put this out here because people like this IP. And sometimes the reason why people create these shows, these series, is not for the right reasons. And as we know, these things are cyclical, right? Not everything can be Star Wars. Not everything can be E.T. Not everything can be Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then when it comes to the TV shows, everything can't be Breaking Bad. Everything can't be Sopranos. Everything can't be Yellowstone. So what you get is a bunch of desperation and people putting a lot of copies and fakes or similars, or I will say a weaker version of copies. This is what the record industry did with grunge. Next thing you know, when Nirvana hit, it was find me a bunch of Nirvanas. And then they were all getting signed from this one area, and then that got burnt out because people said, I'm hearing the same thing, I'm watching the same thing. And what happened, record companies started cutting people real quick after maybe one tour, after one album. So to me, it's just media doing media things.
Yep. And I will say, without sounding like I'm completely crap on the show, I like to look up her name real quick. Rosamund Pike is kind of the star of the
Gone
show.
Girl.
Yep.
And Jack Reacher.
She's a great actress, and she is the standout. And everyone else is just, they're well casted. They're like, oh, okay. And I should also preface, I wasn't even aware of this book. And I work at a comic book shop, but not like a bookstore. So apparently this is a very beloved franchise book series, and I had no knowledge of it. And well, we'll see. I'm going to give it at least a season. It's kept my attention long enough to finish it.
And the other part of it is that it's not maybe even so much about the series itself as it is just these streaming services putting out content, getting your eyes on those ads. Because I mean, they'll take up Cowboy Bebop, and they were pushing this huge. The fanboys were after it for years, and they're hearing John Cho, and they're hearing all this stuff about it, and then it gets a season, which Cowboy Bebop was a limited anime anyway.
Yep.
So what you're getting really was not about getting Cowboy Bebop on screen in a live action format. It was about getting eyes on Netflix, and they knew like how much it was going to cost to get this on. And then they weighed, okay, can we keep eyes on this? And the answer was no, because because it's not so much that even people were going back, they were watching it. we were getting a whole lot of feedback from fans saying I didn't terribly like it, and they listened. And that's the thing, is that these social media companies are listening. They know what to put their money into. They knew how to get the eyes on there. They knew how to get the buzz. They knew how to get them out, and now they can get them out of there and still have that perpetual season always in there. So they've always got that content available. It's a matter of getting eyes on your product.
And the other reason is because
Fair
of
enough.
that, a lot of streaming services are putting top tier stuff on there. And my biggest issue I have with Wheel of Time, and just streaming and movies in general, life is too short for mediocrity. And there's so much great out there. You see something like Cowboy Bebop or Wheel of Time, and it's like, it's okay, but you could have been watching Yellowstone, could have been watching Arcane on Netflix, could have been watching, first few seasons of Stranger Things. There's just so much knock out of the park stuff. I think that's a lot of people are beginning to, if not even, at least subconsciously realize I got to move forward. I can't devote time. Like I was reading an article, they were saying Cowboy Bebop, people apparently like me got 4 episodes in, was like, no, I'm good, just cut it right off and moved on to something else.
Yeah, I think part of it too is when you have a glut of media like we have now. I mean, pretty much you can watch this stuff on your phone, you can watch it on your laptop, you could watch it at home on your big screen, and that affects what you're going to watch, right? Because certain things you really want to see, you'll probably wait till you get home to watch it rather than watching on your small screen here. But if it's something you got to catch up on, you might want to watch it here if you're, So people are watching TV a lot differently now than they were before. And now because there are so many intellectual properties out there that you can get into that are basically nostalgic based, you can't get into all of your favorite old stuff and keep up with the new stuff at the same time. It's hard to go back and forth, and so one's got to give, right? You can't. It's the old saying, you can't serve two masters. Right. So something's got to give, and what'll happen is the stuff that for me, I would rather watch it on my big screen at home than here. So if I do that, then it needs to be something really spectacular. Because if it's just something easy and chumpish and I can get done with it in a couple of weeks, I could have just watched it on my phone while standing in the line at Starbucks waiting to get something or whatever. So I think there's a priority to how people actually watch their media now, too.
Oh, yeah, I have noticed that. I lament that. I don't rewatch my favorite movies as much as I used to. I just always feel like, I could be rewatching a movie, but there might be a new one because there's just so much that gets dropped every single day.
Yeah, and the thing is that, again, going back, they know whose eyes they need on these products.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like I said, with
That's
the
true.
Cowboy Bebop, they were anxious to get that fanboy in there. They were anxious to get that, 18 to 49-year-old guy who loves anime, and then bring their girlfriends in, and then bring,
The little
everyone
brothers
in,
and nephews and
and get
nieces
them
in.
talking about Cowboy Bebop, but it wasn't talking about Cowboy Bebop. It was about talking Cowboy Bebop on Netflix. It was a
Yes.
matter of getting them onto that screen.
Yes. Fair enough. So, Kazak, what have you watched since we last
For
saw
me,
you?
okay, well, for me, I took up Hawkeye on Disney Plus.
Disney Plus strikes again.
And what can I say about this other than that? It's fine. You have Jeremy Renner taking on the trope of the Murtaugh role. I think I can
Okay.
say that. I'm getting
Okay.
too old for this stuff.
Okay. Got
Taking
it.
on that, taking on a protege in Haley Steinfeld, who, you see everything you need to know about the character of Kate Bishop in the opening credits, gymnast and archer and things like that. And then you have, the serviceable odd couple, young, old parody. The reason why I want to bring it up, though, is because, again, going back to our conversation here, is that Disney Plus has kept me rolling onto them. Because right in a row, they've had What If, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Hawkeye, just before Spider-Man hits on the screen. Disney has timed this so well that for me, who is a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm watching it at least once a week. I'm going back and I'm going back and I'm going back. And they're coming back with all these, somewhat serviceable properties because it's just enough. It's just enough to keep you interested, but it's just enough not to make. But it's just enough to keep you kind of bored too. And
Sure.
and like I said, if you're not a consumer of this stuff, if you're not like the huge Marvel fan, it's not something you're going to pay a whole lot of attention to. And I think it's well constructed. You really got to give it to Disney Plus for constructing a release schedule that's really just kind of kept eyes on their product the whole time. And it's been fine. It's been fun. Hawkeye is, Okay. Haley
Yeah.
Steinfeld is a real shine in this. You know, just because she's got great timing. She's such an incredible actress. I really want to see what she does
Yep.
in the future, because that girl is really going to have a even brighter career, even with this, you know, sidetrack into the cinematic universe.
I want to add. I've only seen the first episode. 'Cause I wanted to basically watch it. I'm obsessed with this idea that Feige shot all these like movies, so I kind of want to watch them like movies. So I did see the first one, and I want to add to Zach's point. Haley Steinfeld is outstanding, and almost everything I've seen her in is good. The one of the only two good Transformers movies. Guess what? She's a star of that one. Arcane, one of my new favorite things this year. She's one of the main voices in that. Into the Spider-Verse, one of my favorite anime movies. She's a voice in that. She is going to be a superstar if she keeps on this trajectory. I really like that actress. That said, based on the first episode, to be fair to it, it's just okay. Like these, you know, the Marvel, they know their template. I like Jeremy Renner, but he knows what he's playing. It kind of feels like everyone's doing the exact they need. Well, you know what? It feels like Haley Steinfeld is the one kind of putting 110%, and she does that in all of her stuff. Look through her filmography. She's got a pretty stellar little career, considering she's only like 20 something.
Yeah, ever since True Grit, she's been phenomenal.
Yep.
But the other thing is that this is my main objection to this series. This is my main issue with a whole lot of the Marvel stuff, is that I really need the Marvel property to get me excited about going to read the comic book. I really want to get, you know, that's what I liked about Logan, was that it made me excited to think about going to go read Old Man Logan. The thing that I hated about Doctor Strange is that it didn't get me excited about reading Doctor Strange. Which, you know, he's one of those characters who really, you know, is a big central part of the Marvel universe. And nothing about that movie made me want to go read the comic book. What I hate about these Marvel properties is that they shouldn't just get me excited about going to go see the movies again and keeping on that soap opera track. But what I really want is just the comic book movies to make me excited about the friggin' comic book. I mean, I like Haley Steinfeld, but I have no interest in Kate Bishop. And I know that she's got to have a bigger part in this Marvel universe. And speaking from comic book guys, you guys should be able to inform me why I should go and read Kate Bishop.
I can give you the exact quick reason why that is. I've actually thought about this. I can use two examples. I'll use Doctor Strange, and I'll use Batman Begins. When Doctor Strange ends, that's it. They don't set up that there's going to be further adventures. It's just like, you may see him in the next movie, but until then, he's going to go into a box. You're not going to miss anything he does. Now you look at Batman Begins. When Batman Begins ends, they're like, the criminals are loose. We've got this Joker guy. We've got all these things. Holy crap, Batman, we need your help. And it sets up, we're about to go on more adventures that you as an audience may not even get to see. You better go see the comics if you want to go see the rest of these adventures. The Marvel movies, hard cut. When those credits roll, it is hard cut until the next movie. You get to Batman or the classic superhero movies, it's like there might be more adventures. You know, The Dark Knight, when it ends, there may not have been another movie, but, you know, Batman's on the run. The Joker is still potentially loose. There's still more adventures to be had that you may need. So that's what you're seeing. And the Marvel movies have that's a part of their template. Just have a hard end, and then you put those characters on the shelf until we need them in another movie. Oh, it's very interesting. Like, to your point, Disney has gotten this down to a science. This is billions of dollars in place, so they're really getting this down.
And that's the issue to it, because I mean, it's one thing to get it to a science, but what's great about anything is feel.
Yep. 100%.
Take a musician, right? If he plays the same 3 power chords the same way, you're bored, even if it's a hype tempo and everything else.
It's been working for AC/DC for nearly 50 years. Shut your mouth. Right?
AC/DC being the exception and not the rule. So you think about it like this. The reason why they can sell more is when Angus Young does play those power chords, he at least tries to make them feel somewhat different a little bit, even though you know where that tune is. So I love that. But the thing is that to me, the moment this sounds like an assembly line movie production unit, then you lose me. Yeah. Because for me, what's exciting about going to movies is that you're escaping your everyday doldrums, your reality, and you're being sit down in a comfortable theater to watch on a huge screen with wonderful Dolby sound going all over the place, to lose yourself into something that hopefully is a good story with a good narrative at the end of the day, where the person that you're following, that the protagonist, does something genius or gets paid an awful lesson that you want to see how is he going to fix that when they do the second one. Now it's to the point where it's a car. It's got a door. It's got a door handle. It's got windows. They're going to go up. They're going to go down. And it's like, that's what it is. And so now you sit down, you watch Wanda, and you watch the other ones, and you watch Winter Soldier. You kind of get a sense of, oh yeah, here's the door, here's the handle, here's the window, you already see all of it. So that for me, it takes some of the fun out of it. So for me, I like the Marvel movies, but I have Marvel fatigue. Yep. So it's just like anybody that you're ever dating, as great as they are, they can still get on your nerves. Yeah. And that's what Marvel's doing to me right now, because I'm kind of going, really? This is what you're going to do every time we go to the movies? You're going to fall asleep when I take you to them? No. Is this what you're going to do every time? Is you're going to basically say, here's a character you know and love, and guess what? They're the hero, which you know what that means. What's going to happen for them the next hour and 20 minutes? And then it doesn't disappoint you. And then they go, hey, in the credits, here's another movie where that guy you saw in this one scene that one time is going to be in this movie, and he's going to have this show up. And you're going, okay, you're doing your pre-ticket sales for your next movie. So all of that just feels so contrived to me, and I lose the feeling of, what's the story? What do I need to know about Hawkeye? What do I need to know about Kate Bishop that makes a difference?
Yeah, it's just that I want these movies and I want these TV series to drive me back to the comic books. I really want
For
them.
sure.
Oh, we want to go back to source material.
Yeah, I want people to get excited about comic books again. I want them to support the comic book stores. I want them to support these great artists who are making some tremendous stories. Yep. So that we keep getting these better stories, and we keep getting better movies, so we don't have to keep relying on cheap jokes.
Yep.
Yeah. And action figures
to be
for
interesting.
everything.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, to get people interested in Shang-Chi, you had to throw in Awkwafina, a completely contrived character for the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
And she's fantastic in Shang-Chi. Don't get me wrong. She's great. But they had to completely contrive this character where they could have gone for someone from the Marvel Universe, but they didn't have it.
Yes. Yeah.
They just didn't have it, and that drives me crazy. That drives me nuts.
Well, I think this is true, and I think everything you've heard here today definitely represents kind of how we're seeing movies, how we're seeing TV shows, and then, of course, how we're responding to the movie theaters and the movie studios when they decide to say, I got something that works, let's see how much we can just draw it out of them till they finally get sick of it. But let's talk about, oh, and by the way, Prim is online. He's saying, hi, Horror Mike. So
hey, Prim, how's it going?
Because, Edward Smith is his real name, and he's a big horror fan, so he's giving you a shout out on that. So why don't we do it? Why don't we just jump to the main movie topic that we're going to talk about today, and that is movies that you were gifted. So all of us at some point in time, we're going to start with Horror Mike. At some point in time, somebody at Christmas decided to give you a movie. What we hoped is that they put some thought into it. They didn't just pick something from the $5 bin at Walmart, but instead said, I bet you Mike would like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's always drawing them. Yep. I'm going to get him that movie. So, Mike, let's start with you. And with this being just two of them, you can give us both. We don't have to go all the way around.
Okay.
We'll just do this one.
The two that I actually do remember would be Home Alone. Was given to me as a gift. I was probably around the age of 4 or 5. It was a Christmas gift, and it was given in like a double pack. I don't remember what the other movie is. We all as kids have that movie we watched a million times. This is one of those two for me. These are those two movies for me: Home Alone and Ghostbusters. I've watched Ghostbusters 1 and 2 way too many times, and they're both gifts. Ghostbusters was gifted to me by my dad because he had it and was just like, I like this movie, and I know you like monsters, so this is a cool monster movie. My dad, to your point, my dad knew as a kid what I liked. In Home Alone, I think it was just like, here's a holiday movie pack. Here you go, movies. We'll probably touch on it a little bit later, but yeah, you just don't see people gifting movies as much as they used to.
Right.
And I definitely want to touch on that a little bit later, but it's those were mine too, and they basically have made lifelong fandoms for me. I've never hit that fact. I'm a big Aliens and Ghostbusters fan, and when it comes to Home Alone, I always touch in on the franchise. I'm not like the world's biggest Home Alone fan, but I've seen literally every movie, including the newest terrible one on Disney Plus. Do not see that new Disney Plus one. It is horrific. I felt obligated to watch it mainly because when I was 5, someone gave me the Home Alone, and I liked the first 2 movies. So I just keep checking back in on that franchise. Yeah, I think the Home Alone was given just out of, hey, this is a Christmas movie for a kid. I don't, who knows? They're just like, hey, you might like it, might not. It's a funny movie. And Ghostbusters was given to me. My dad just was like, oh, my son likes monsters, and this movie has monsters, and I liked it. Let me give it to my son. He might enjoy that movie. Yeah, I think that's I've always really enjoyed those movies. And I always appreciate those movies a lot. And that's, like I said, it was given to me at those exact right ages. That kind of made lifelong fandoms for me on both, on one and then mildly on another one. Then I'll tolerate an hour and a half of something I just hate, just because that romance I have with the original film.
It's weird because I can see where you're coming from, because for me, I was at me and PJ kind of got a few years out of you, brother.
Yeah, right.
Watching Ghostbusters in the theater is one of those movies that made me fall in love with movies, and then going to go see Home Alone in the theater made me fall out of love with Hollywood films, because I see Chris Columbus, and when Home Alone comes out, I'm at that age where I'm really starting to appreciate what movies are as an art form.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Home Alone and I'm going, this is mean. This is cruel. This is terrible. This is a live action cartoon, and I'm not laughing. And I'm at that age where it's just like, this ain't funny.
The original.
Yeah.
So really, that's actually curious. I've never. I hear that criticism with the newer Home Alones. I've actually never heard that with the original one. That's very interesting.
With me, because again, it was at that age where I'm starting to kind of realize, big Hollywood isn't necessarily good Hollywood. And even though it's on the screen, it comes to me at that kind of conscious age where I'm like, okay, I can see why people like this, but it's not for me, because I'm thinking Joe Pesci, and I'm seeing him in other stuff. I'm probably at the age where I'm seeing Goodfellas for the first time, or My Cousin Vinny and things like that, and I understand what a good actor Joe Pesci is. And I'm seeing him in this, and I'm going, this isn't funny. This is mean. This is vicious, and I'm not digging the live action cartoon. And I mean, it was one of the first times I could actually say that about a movie, because I really love Catherine O'Hara, and I thought they portrayed her terribly in the film.
She's not winning Mother of the Year.
No.
Yeah, she leaves her kid.
I find that everything you just said, I'm not going to push back on, because keep in mind, I love the first Home Alone, but I don't think I disagree with anything you just said. Yeah. And my shirt, I'm a big animation guy, especially like classic, and it's basically a live action Tom and Jerry.
No, you're not. You're Horror Mike.
Yeah,
only Horror Mike. That's in your contract.
Stay on brand.
No, but I mean, everything that I hated about Home Alone, I loved about Sam Raimi's Crime Wave, because it's that live action cartoon. Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
They're live action cartoons, which are amazing.
Yeah.
But with this one, it just hit home for me that this isn't good.
Yeah,
I genuinely find that interesting, because there's elements of...
Look, you're doing it now. He's doing the Home Alone.
Yeah, right? I also, just subconsciously...
What is happening here? We're in the third zone now.
I'm genuinely... Well, I don't know. It's almost like if somebody were to come to me and say, I hate Alien, and then they give me bullet points on why they hate it, I'd be like, wow, I can't comprehend me ever disliking it, but you brought up legitimate criticism.
Of course. And I would say the same damn thing, because I think the key here is, he said it, the age range. If you're
100%.
older, like I saw it, I'm a little older than Kazak when I saw it, and I was sitting there doing the same thing. I was thought, okay, it's a Christmas movie. It's charming. It's got some charming moments to it. But hey, what we eating after this?
That is so. Wow. This is a fascinating. Okay, no, that's fair. We definitely have to. I want to stay on just an element of Home Alone, but I guess I've never put myself in. What if I had seen that movie old? Because the newest Home Alone I did on Disney Plus, I was in the mindset. I know this is going outside of being a bad movie. Yeah. I was in the mindset of like, man, these people could have done this. They could have called for help. I was like thinking as an adult. Whereas as a kid, I don't think a kid would have thought about, well, a kid would have turned his movie off. But I don't think a kid would have thought about elements of call the police, call for help. You can ask for financial aid, and it just things us. So, wow, that is great. Thank you for letting me know. That's really gonna make me. I want to rewatch it.
Did you
now.
really think everybody loved that movie?
I
Mike?
actually
come
did,
on,
yes.
really?
It's
oh my God.
when people
Wait till we
list.
start talking about Forrest Gump. You're
Oh,
really not
dude,
like
when-
that.
Oh, we're gonna get into that one.
Well, here's the thing: when people list the top Christmas movies of all time, it's always within the 10. It's never in the top 5. Like that. Let's not get crazy here. But it always cracks the top 10 list. People always list Home Alone as the top.
But
10.
who's doing the top 10 list?
That's fair. I wouldn't.
It's
I
an
wouldn't
easy
look back at it.
It's an easy reach because it takes place at Christmas.
Yeah.
And it tugs at those Christmas heartstrings, but it could have taken place at any time. It's just a matter of one of those films that gets that gets played out at the holidays because it takes place during Christmas.
Yep.
And Mr. Macaulay Culkin, kids want to see there's always a child actor who comes up, rises up out of all the adult actors that everybody goes, oh, that guy's pretty good. I want to see what happens to him when he gets older. So he's one of them, and there's a ton of others. That's what Finn Wolfhard is going through right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Oh,
It's what Corey Feldman went through.
Yeah,
There's,
absolutely.
every generation has that, and yeah, Finn Wolfhard is just generations where, let's see how this kid turns out. No, that's very. I think I have no pushback against what you said. I've just never. Yes, I genuinely thought everyone just enjoyed that movie. It's always on a list, and now I want to go back and look at who's making those lists. Very interesting. Okay.
Zach, how about you, brother? What were you gifted?
All right. So a film that kept coming back to me and coming back to me and coming back to me from my folks was always The Blues Brothers. It was one of those films that it was the film that I was raised on because when I'm 4 years old, it's one of those movies that just has that soundtrack, and it's a movie that was on that my parents put on all the time because it's such a good musical. It's such a good movie, and it's a movie that kept coming back to me in every format, and it's that movie that I embraced because of how tied to it I was to my folks. It very much because of my mom, because she's from Chicago. My parents were, raised around that music, and getting to appreciate it, even further as a kid. It's still funny because of that subversive comedy. It's still funny because it comes from that National Lampoon School of Comedy. It comes from that John Landis mind. It comes from that mind of Dan Aykroyd, and it comes from that John Belushi. And as I get older, I fully appreciate just what those guys did for movies and movie making, and being gifted that film. It's that film that just keeps on tying me to my folks because it was a movie that they liked, because it was actors that they enjoyed, and because of that soundtrack, it got me interested in blues music. It got me interested in that school of comedy. It's that one movie that ties me so hard to how I was brought up that I still watch it every year, and it's one of those films that I'll put on every time because it's still funny every single time.
Yes.
Yeah.
That music is great every single time. It is a timeless film, and it's so good.
It's got some of the best car chases. It's crazy that you think Blues Brothers has some just
another
amazing
trope,
action
car
scenes.
traces.
Oh yeah,
sorry.
I think they used Blues Brothers. What's that in the first one? It's not 2000 when they drive through the mall.
Yeah.
That's the first one. Unlike you, I actually think I was also gifted Blues Brothers. It was a double pack of Blues Brothers and Blues Brothers 2000.
What's up with
on
these
VHS.
double packs? You got these very
Dude,
economical people.
my family got those bad boys on sale all the time. It was a
Exactly.
double pack. I think I saw them both back to back.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I take it back. I actually saw Blues Brothers 2000 in theaters first. And then I went back and saw the original movie. I was like, oh, wow, this one's just a better film. I was like, 2000 was fun. And then I saw the original. I was like, oh, wow, that other movie just wasn't that great.
yeah, you're watching that at context.
Yep.
Because without that context, you really can't appreciate just how funny the Blues Brothers 2000 is serviceable.
Yeah.
Serviceable. That's pretty much it. But I mean, the thing about the only thing that makes Blues Brothers 2000 really palatable is just the soundtrack because of that.
It has a great
Because
soundtrack.
the greatest jam band ever.
Yep.
So, but yeah, the other film, I guess we're gonna go ahead and do both.
Sure. Yes.
The other film that was gifted to me, and I call it the gift because the film itself wasn't so much gifted to me as it just was the experience, and that's Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
Evil Dead 2: Dead by Dawn is that first film that I see that I really kind of watched and appreciate it as a horror fan. Because, like I said, I had no context coming in. I had no understanding what the film was. Just like my sister shows, here, watch this. And I watch it and I go, this is amazing. This is an amazing film because it is that live action cartoon, but it is also just a great horror film. And it's so bizarre and it's so out of left field and there's no visible plot. It's just one violent sequence after another, but there's great makeup and there's great camera angles and things like that. And it's just funny. I mean, I don't watch the first Evil Dead. I watched the second one, and that's where I started from, Evil Dead 2. Yeah. And it's just weird and amazing, but it's the movie that was gifted to me, and it was gifted to me and made me a horror fan. It got me there.
Something of note that I learned, because this happened with me, and almost everyone I've spoken to is this way. With the Evil Dead franchise, almost everyone gets introduced to it and watches it backwards. So for me, I watched Army of Darkness first. Loved it. Then I watched Evil Dead 2. Then I went back and watched Evil Dead 1. Now I've met people who saw the series, then went and watched Army of Darkness, and then worked their way backwards. What an interesting franchise.
Yeah.
That seemingly is pretty common. People get introduced to whatever the current incarnation is and then watch it in backwards order. They don't start at Evil Dead 1 and then watch up.
Right. But I mean, for me, because I come from, one of those rural communities, Evil Dead 1 didn't exist on VHS. They didn't exist in the horror stores. Exist in the horror stores.
Right.
But
That's
I
a good
found
point.
Evil Dead 2. It was all over the place, and you could always see it. And it had that visible skull with the eyes thing. It was one of those eye popper. Okay, let's rent this and watch this. But we couldn't find Evil Dead 1 anywhere. And then suddenly it pops up in some weird dark little like video stores. Like, okay, this is it. This is the movie. And then like, okay, now I get this. And then you get Army of Darkness, and I get this. And it was one of those movies that Evil Dead 1 was hard to find. Evil Dead 2 was a lot easier, and it's still enjoyable. Man.
Yeah, I had to go down to kids what was called a Blockbuster, which was a Netflix building you walked into and took the movie and then brought it back.
And if you didn't bring it back on time, you got these thing called fees.
Oh yeah, that's how they got Biggie.
And then if you didn't pay those fees, they would charge you fees for not paying your fees.
That's it.
And then they report you to the IRS.
Let me tell you, that was the fees.
It always amazes me. I hear from like you and PA when it's like it's so weird to me, being born late 80s. That a time where you just couldn't get movies, and historically, I obviously know, like, I know the history of the format wars, and that just wasn't a thing. People couldn't just roll up and just get whatever movie they want. So that's a very strange, unique to me, as it would be unique to people who hear when you show a kid a landline, like what a phone with a cord is. They're like, what is that thing?
For sure.
It's just like, that's very interesting. Wow. I guess I just didn't think about it. You wouldn't just be able to walk and see, give me Evil Dead. It's like,
yeah.
Like go find a movie from 5 years ago.
Right.
Go find a theater 5 years ago.
That's why you kids don't need to complain about anything.
Right? Ever.
We know what it's like to have to walk to a Blockbuster on one leg to keep the other leg warm on a cold winter, understanding that you had to hurry up and get back home for your mom caught that you left the house in the first place when she told you not to leave because it was that bad outside.
And then you had to get it back by 10 a.m. or you were charged fees.
That's it. Well, the movies then that I was gifted, actually, I didn't get many of these. This was actually a super hard question for me to answer because I pretty much bought everything I wanted, and I knew more about movies than anybody else around me, so they wouldn't know what to get me because it was kind of like, so I had to think back really hard, and I do know that for Christmas, what I got, one of mine was the Sopranos box set. So that was because my parents didn't have Showtime. They didn't want to pay for it, or HBO, whichever one it was on. I think it was Showtime.
HBO.
It's HBO? Yeah, it was HBO. So Christmas then would mean I would get that box set so that we could then catch up and watch all the ones that my parents had never seen, but maybe I'd already seen already. So, because they were actually interested in Tony Soprano as well, and they thought his mom Livia was a kick, and everything else was, and Uncle Junior was pretty funny. So that was something that we could do every Christmas. Was that, we would watch one season, and then the next Christmas we'd watch the next season, that sort of thing. And so it was kind of fun in that way. Then the other movie, and this was hard, but I finally figured it out because I was talking to Horror Mike about this earlier in the week, trying to figure out what this would be. And there was a girlfriend of mine that she bought me the Gladiator special edition one, so she knew that I loved Braveheart.
Yeah.
And so when this came out, she knew I was going to go buy it, so she went and bought it first. This is probably the only time that's ever happened. So I had the Gladiator special edition. So, you know, to me, you give me a sword and sandal movie, you give me a guy that was done wrong by the government, you know, and you have the soldier who's standing alone having to fight all the odds. That sounds like a kung fu movie. One guy taking out a whole bunch of other people. So I
Wait
was
a
like,
minute. Did you have an airline pilot once ask you, "Hey kid, do you like films about gladiators?"
Yeah. You remind me because I'm the same way, and I want to say a similar situation happened with me with the TV show Spartacus. I used to have to buy that one. And it's, by the way, everything you said. Like I used to love that show. Obviously, the first actor passed, but that's textbook like Gladiator. That's just one of those movies where it's I love sword and sandals and a person either working their way from the bottom, getting knocked to the bottom and climbing back up, or starting at the bottom and you know you're kind of Scarface situation, starting from the bottom. Now we're here.
Yes.
No, that's very interesting. It's so hard to buy for us.
Yeah.
Well,
we're collectors.
I was kind of weird on the sword and sandal epics in the fact that I watched them all as a kid because, like I said, when I was growing up, the big toy was He-Man, so we had a whole bunch of those barbarian sword and sorcery knockoffs that we were forced to watch, and a lot of them were just terrible. And I think I kind of burnt myself out on them.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. And I was sitting here liking this because think about this. This is a movie by Ridley Scott. All right, how can you go wrong there? Then you have Russell Crowe in a standout performance. Then you have Joaquin Phoenix, a guy who we remember playing in Joker. So it's interesting that you have this great cast as well, and then just the cinematography was great. Like when you watch this movie in that Dolby Theater system, you know what you thought about right off the bat was, I really feel like I'm back in medieval times, because the clanking of the swords is not something you hear every day in a digital world, right? And so I also understand in this movie, this was the first that CGI started to come in, right? So we had it in the Matrix, so we had it in the Star Wars movie, and it was in here in the Colosseum scenes. So we were just starting to understand a little bit about how CGI kind of can be, what it can look like, and of course now we're just kind of bored of it. We see it all the time, right? So this was fantastic, and the fact that they made a special edition to it. So there's an extended cut, and then there's another cut too that's out there. So maybe I need to go collect that.
I have both of the. I used to have. I lost one when I moved. I lost like 100+ DVDs. Like when I moved back home. It was that was one of them. I had the two, because to your point, there was like the special edition and there was like
a sapphire
the
cut
epic
or something
like that. Like there's two different cuts of that film, and I watched them both and the features, which is just a lost thing. You don't get those as much as Blu-ray. Like in DVDs, used to have 6 hours of features. I'd be like, this is it. And I watched all the features. I'm just being amazed by like, isn't it crazy that those special effects hold up by today's standards, and now a lot of it seemingly is kind of crappy because like, oh yeah, there's not millions of people in the stands. That was all like CGI, and I was like, I couldn't tell.
Well, I would make the argument with anyone that was probably one of the best uses of CGI ever, in terms of making a mixture of CGI and live action. Like it's seamless. Everything else is either super, super heavy CGI, or it's just we use it on this one spot here or there. I think this movie, because you don't even notice it until you get to the Coliseum and you know it doesn't look like that.
I'm going to meet you. Yeah.
But it's probably one of the best examples of how CGI and live action can sit on top of each other without overshadowing the other.
I actually have 3 I'd recommend. That's actually one for 100%. It's Gladiator, the first Jurassic Park, because I don't know, Spielberg is such a talented director. The other movies just look so fake, but that first movie, it's like it feels so real because they add in the animatronics with the CGI. Right. And one is later on my list that has a very good special effects. I'll bring that one up later when I get to it. But there's 3 movies that I agree with where the CGI is so seamless. It's like, why aren't we doing this more? That's Jurassic Park, Gladiator, and the one I have on my list. Yeah, I agree 100%.
That's good. So let's jump into, for the film fans watching. Now that was us being gifted. So now we're going to talk about some of the movies that we have gifted. So, Mike, we'll start with you again. What movie did you give?
The movie I have given, 2 movies. I've given the absolute most, and that was Forrest Gump, which is the 3rd movie that I have on my list of CGI and special effects being used shockingly seamless. There are scenes on that I did not realize were CGI to this day, like Sergeant Dan, his legs They CGI'd him out. I was like, I didn't realize that. Obviously, the most famous ones is incorporating him into real footage. That's a special effect CGI. So Forrest Gump is another one where I was like, it's shockingly seamless. I just think it's a classic movie starter pack. Forrest Gump is not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. It's very long-winded in spaces, but I think it's got so many great actors in it, so many really nice, good performances, a really compelling story. I mean, we still reference Run, Forrest, Run to this day in pop culture. I used to get that movie a lot to people. Not as much anymore. A lot of people shockingly don't have DVD players anymore. And that's one. And Big Fish is a personal favorite movie of mine. It's a movie, Ewan McGregor, Tim Burton. It's a movie about the importance of stories. And I mean, we're all here because we love stories. And I always give that to people. It's like, you want to know why I love comics and movies and video games? Because of stories. This movie is the importance of stories. So Big Fish and Forrest Gump are movies I always give about the importance of passing on and how stories can affect us. And that's one of the reasons I give them both of those movies. I've probably made that movie at least $1,000. Both of those movies $1,000 extra in just DVD sales, giving it to people alone.
Okay, Zach, how about you?
Okay, so I didn't necessarily give the DVD as a gift, but pre-pandemic, I was hosting movie nights at my house where I would serve people some decent food, and then I'd show them a terrible film because I love introducing people to terrible films. I love introducing people to just some of the worst stuff,
He ain't
some of the most
lying.
amazing stuff,
Right.
and then, but not just to introduce them to how brilliant these films are, but to watch them in awe as to what happens. And the film that I gifted, one of my favorite films, is the film that I love to give. Why do you love horror? What's your favorite horror film? It's always Dead Alive.
Yeah.
Because
Brain dead.
because watching people watch Dead Alive is a thrill, because it's one of those movies that it just keeps happening and it just keeps getting worse and it just keeps getting worse. And just when you think the gore has stopped, here comes the friggin' lawnmower.
Yep.
And that's all I have to say about the lawnmower. That's all I have to say about the lawnmower scene, is that any horror fanatic who worth their salt knows what that means, the lawnmower. But I mean, Dead Alive is just one of those films that it's just so great as a horror film, because it's funny and it's weird and it's amazingly, horrifically violent. And if you have people who, I love Lord of the Rings. Really?
Oh,
you like Peter Jackson? I got something for you. and that's that laugh. That's that laugh, Mike, that you give when have I got something for you? Have I got a wonderful horror film for you? And then you watch them watch the zombie baby, and you watch them have the karate kicking preacher, and you see all these great moments that make up this film, and you get to give that to them, and you watch them go, what the hell is happening right now?
Quick question, because I have an interesting story on this. Which one is it called in America? Is it Brain Dead or is it Dead or Alive?
Dead Alive.
Dead Alive, okay.
It's mostly Brain Dead over in New Zealand and UK.
So I saw it as Dead Alive on cable, and then loved it. And then years later, my friend kept telling me about Brain Dead, and I was like, I've never heard of a movie called Brain. He was describing it to me. I'm like, it sounds a lot like Dead Alive. He says, no, I've never. He was telling me, I've never heard of Dead Alive. Like, let me show you this movie. And I get like 20 minutes in, I'm like, this is Dead Alive. Like this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't know they had changed the title. Oh, it was great. I love that I kind of had this connection of like, we both loved this movie and wasn't aware that it was called these different film names. Yes, I'm a big fan. I think I agree with that one being I've done that exact same thing. You like Lord of the Rings, huh? I have a film for you, my good sir.
Yeah, and for the horror fans out there, just to let you know that eventually, hopefully sometime next year, we're going to get 4K restorations of Dead Alive, Bad Taste, Heavenly Creatures, and Meet the Feebles. And you're getting to see Peter Jackson stuff in some really high definition, finally getting some really decent cuts of these. That's a really, really big thing. That's going to be a gift for your horror fan in 2022.
Yeah, no, see, so that makes sense. Now, the movie that I have has the dubious distinction Actually, I'll say the greatest distinction of being better than any of the sequel movies that have come out in the last 3 years.
Ooh, shots fired, boys. Shots fired.
That's it. Machine gun rounds fired. This movie is called Fanboys, and I've given this several times to some of my friends who are nerds who had never seen it or they'd never even heard about it. And I was actually surprised at how many people hadn't heard of it. But Fanboys, this movie is excellent. You talk about written well, cameos, perfectly timed, lead characters that you follow with this whole thing. So it's another one of those destination type films where these guys, the road trip film where they're trying to get to Skywalker Ranch because they want to be the first ones to see, which would have been at that time episode one. Yeah. So it takes place back then at that time frame in the 90s of just these, what was Star Wars fans doing before they got it, when they started to get excited about this new Star Wars film. So these guys feel like they're going to just hop in this van and go over there and see if they can steal a copy or print or watch it before everyone else. And in that, all the hilarity ensues. So you've got cameos from Carrie Fisher, God rest her soul, even Lando Calrissian's in this film.
Mark Hamill?
No, Mark Hamill.
No, not Mark Hamill. I'm mixing
it's
up.
just those two.
Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, it's
Billy D. Williams. That's what I'm
Billy D.
forgetting. I'm mixing
Williams,
up.
which is
Billy
Lando.
D. Williams, William Shatner, Seth Rogen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you have them, and then you have the comedic genius of Danny McBride, who I love to death in this film. So it's just the whole idea, the script is super smart, and to have them towards the end going through Lucas's house like it was the trash compactor, copying all these scenes.
Right, yes.
Every one of the liners in this works because you could see people using, and that is probably one of the most quoted movies of all time is Star Wars, and you can pick any one of the three. And so for me, whenever I have a chance and someone tells me they're a big nerd and they're really into this and maybe even Star Wars, I go, have you ever seen a movie called Fanboys? And they go, Fanboys? Was it on TV? Was it? And I'm like, no, let me make sure you get a chance to see this. Oh, yeah. So Dan Fogelberg, Kristen Bell, Jay Baruchel. Oh,
and that's the other thing. That's I get two reactions to that. Either they haven't seen. Okay, I will say a lot of people I know just haven't seen it, or they confuse it with The People versus George Lucas, which a shocking amount of people have seen that documentary.
Yeah.
Fanboys is I'll kind of explain. Fanboys and the movie Animal House are these great time capsule comedies that show you a very specific point in time. And both of those movies I consider classics, and they've both been kind of memory hole. People just don't talk about them. They're not in the conversation anymore, as much as I think they both should be.
Sure.
And you don't hear it because I love Fanboys, and I'm shocked at how many people have never even heard of it.
Yeah.
And I like that movie is outstanding, and it's a great little time capsule of how it was. It's a very exaggerated but very fairly accurate representation of that
it's fun.
Beginning of internet culture geekery.
Yeah.
And I love that movie. The movie's great. I used to watch it every year until, again, like we were saying before, it's just so hard to keep up with everything that comes out all the time.
Yeah, and kind of one of those weird brushes with fame. Just before the film came out, I actually got to meet Ernest Cline. Ernest Cline is the not only the writer of this, but he's the writer and the director of this. He's also the writer behind Ready Player One. And I actually got to meet him when I was doing a poetry competition in Austin. And I got to meet the character that Seth Rogen plays. His name is Admiral C. Schultz. Admiral C. Schultz is based on a poet named Shappy C. Schultz, who was just one of these guys who was kind of Austin/New York. And he's standing right next to Seth Rogen during this movie. So he's actually on set playing next to the character. That's nice. So it's just kind of, because Ernie Klein has one of these ties to Austin, things like that.
Sure.
He's getting kind of that Austin rub and things like that.
Yeah.
And so getting to meet him, just a very, very nice dude. And we were actually hopefully trying to get a screening of it for this poetry competition, but we couldn't because of rights and things like that. But still,
for sure,
the dude was very, very nice. And like I said, Fanboys is a fun film with a really, really phenomenal cast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you if anything, and I've never heard a single really bad thing about Fanboys. It's the cast. It's a really kind of genuine little story about friendship and moving forward.
Sure.
And the cast is really, it's always kind of great now. Was it 10 years now? Oh my gosh, I don't like this whole time moving forward now. Seeing how most of those actors where they've gone to now, that's kind of great. I really like that movie. It's kind of a nice little checkpoint in a lot of those actors' lives.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where if you could ever have a movie that hits and checks every box without being pretentious and contrived about it,
Fanboys.
it's this movie. When you
100%.
sit down, you watch it, at first you're kind of going, oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah, me and my buddies used to do that back in the day. And then when you watch it take its arc, and the one of the guys has a cancer or something, and it may not be, and it just takes this tone, and then the soundtrack. They have that song, it's lump, it's in my head by the Presidents of America, that old, very kitschy song. I mean, there's so many great things about it. But what I would also say too is that today they need to do a part 2. Because they need to go back in time when just before the sequels came out, because they could practically almost use the same joke at the end where they go, "Hey, what if this movie sucks?"
Yeah, what if that is I loved that. That ending is to me is a knockout. It handles all those. I think what was that movie with Seth Rogen where his friend 50-50 or
50-50.
where it handles, it's still funny, but it handles a very kind of serious subject. And I thought Fanboys handled that well, 50-50 handled that well,
Knocked Up
handled that well, where it can be serious, but it's like there is humor to tragedy, and I was like, wow, that's a very fine line to balance. And no, that's a great one. I really do. I hate that more people have not seen that movie.
Yeah, and that's why we need to be gifting it more. So everyone, if you haven't seen Fanboys, jump on it, but we'll gift it to you if we have to. So so let's get to that last segment of the day, and this is where we're going to talk to you, viewer, and thank you for being here this morning and watching us. And if you haven't been here before, go ahead and subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. You'll see that Fulfillment channel is on the Vegabomber channel, and then also on the Facebook page of Vegabomber as well. So connect with us, but for this part, what we'd like to do is tell you which movie we would gift to you if you sat down right in front of us and started sharing with us your joy of films. We would probably have a movie in our mind, and then we'd probably tell you that, and they could join your collection. So, Horror Mike, go ahead and give us that movie you would tell.
It is the documentary. It is the documentary movie. Won't You Be My Neighbor? It is probably one of my favorite documentary. It is my favorite documentary of all time, and it's up there as one of my favorite films of all time. This is a bio documentary about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, the most well known, and about his life and how he cared about people, and specifically children, about the trials and tribulations he went through, and just the effect he had on people. Just really, all he really did was just be a good person. And I swear by this film. I have recommended it to so many people. I wish I could gift it to more people, but unfortunately, the nature of just streaming in general, most people just don't just get movies anymore. But I've recommended it. It's currently on HBO Max. I looked that up before I got here, and PJ recommended that movie to me. I went and saw it, and I was like, well, PJ's never turned me wrong. I'm going to give it a shot, and I watched it. And I was blown away. I didn't know that man's full story. I've always been mildly aware of it, and he became one of my favorite historical figures. Like I've always appreciated what he's done. I always recommend people just try to be good to each other, and kind of follow what Fred Rogers tried to do.
Yeah, if you're not in tears by the end of that movie, you have no heart.
Yeah,
Because
100%.
literally, I never cry at movies, and that was the one that literally got physical tears out of me. It's amazing.
They show him at a Senate. It was a Senate, right? I believe it was a Senate hearing on getting more money for public television, PBS, and it's incredible. And all the man did was just be kind and show why being kind matters. And I always recommend that to everyone. So if anything, it's a must-watch. Won't You Be My Neighbor? Documentary on Fred Rogers.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, I love it. How about you, Kazan?
For me, the film that I would choose if I were going to gift a film to someone, why do you love film? This is a movie that really kind of got me thinking about the beauty of film, and that is a film called The City of Lost Children. This is a film from, I believe, 2004, or I'm sorry, 2002, something like that. Anyway, it's an amazing fantasy film. It's all in French, so like I said, even if you don't like subtitles, this is a film that you watch to get the subtitles on. It is just this weird French fairy tale about children who are kidnapped. You have Ron Perlman speaking French throughout the whole film as a circus strongman. The film is what if you had to explain what steampunk was? This is the film that you show them. But it's just this amazing, eye-dropping, eye-catching, jaw-dropping fantasy film, which is something that I don't think we get anymore. I mean, everything is, all practical effects, and, there's brains in jars, and there's weird camera angles and things like that. It's just bizarre and weird, but it's bizarre and weird in the good way that film really should take you beyond what normal films are. If you want to see a film, this is one that I will put in your hands and say, check this out, because it's really kind of one of those films that can kind of touch all ages. It's one of those films that if you want to kind of give someone an introduction to French cinema, or if you just want to give someone, here, this is something really different that you should see, that's why I would gift it to you and have you watch this film.
Oh, well.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's great. Yeah, it's my mom being French, and today's her birthday, so happy birthday, Mom. Yeah, so you have the scientist who's trying to extrapolate dreams from kids because he's starting to deteriorate in some kind of way, and so he's trying to extrapolate these dreams from these kids. And just to Kazak's point, I mean, just the idea of how you also match sound to kind of warp with the video, so something hits it. The sound makes it look like everything moved rather than things moved visually. I mean, every possible sight gag trick you can think of is in there, including the angles and sometimes the shading and the coloring.
The coloring. It's grimy and it's dirty and things like that, but it's so amazing because it plays so well on screen with the way they filmed it.
And I was thinking, I was like, when I saw it on the list, I was like, oh, I've seen that movie. And then I just realized when you described it, I'm like, I've never seen this movie. I'm thinking of City of Angels. I just looked it up.
No.
So I was mistaken. I was like, that's why I was so confused. I was like, why would he gift City of Angels? I mean, that's a weird gift. Maybe Zach will explain.
No, I mean, I'd gift you Wicker Man before I gift you the remake before I gift you City of Angels.
I'm going to check that out.
Bees.
I'm going to check that one out. I've never seen this film. Never wasn't aware of it. I'm going to check it out, especially with Ron Perlman. I love Ron Perlman.
Yeah, Ron Perlman speaking French throughout the whole thing.
All right.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, that is great. And so, for you true believers, the gift that I'm going to give to you, these guys have heard me gush over this film for many of seasons and years because I have still that impressed. In 2016, there was a Western crime drama that came out that was about an hour and 42 minutes, and the name of the movie is called Hell or High Water. And Taylor Sheridan is the writer. It was directed by David Mackenzie, and this movie catches you off guard because in a world of superheroes and Mission Impossible and Jason Bourne and all this stuff, boom, here comes a straightforward story about a Texas Ranger, and at the same time, two sons, one delinquent and one trying to get things right, and the passing of a mother, and then you're trying to decide throughout the movie who's the real villain here. Is it the Texas Rangers for wanting to take these boys in, or is it the boys for doing what they're doing, but do they have a reason for what they're doing, or is there another villain that's more corporate in structure that you just don't see, but you can see the effects of what that's doing? And so it's set in Texas. It was filmed in New Mexico, so they didn't quite get that part right, but at least they tried, right? And you get this amazing Western film where it isn't about who's going to draw their gun and who's going to shoot first or anything like that. Instead, it's psychological because there's a loss on both sides. The Texas Ranger loses his best friend and partner, but on the other side, the good brother loses the bad brother who he was trying to redeem, while at the same time trying to save what would happen to his mother's ranch and her property. So it catches you off guard. The dialogue is sharp. Yeah. It's witty. It's on point. It has you believing. Okay, I could see what Chris Pine would say that. Chris Pine's one of the good brothers. The bad brother is Ben Foster, who I love to death, especially in 310 to Yuma. Jeff Bridges is that tall, lean Texas Ranger that you want to see him go out on a high note as he's winding down. Gil Birmingham is the partner of his who's also in Yellowstone today.
I loved him.
Yes.
I loved him in that movie.
Yes.
I will say that's that movie that every few years there's a movie that comes out that's when no one sees it and it bombs. But then when people see it, they're like, this thing's incredible. And I've heard that a few weeks ago, that was The Last Duel by Ridley Scott. Like everyone who I trust who has seen it has said that thing's a masterpiece, and it face planted in the box office. Like it made no money. And I believe before it was Hell or High Water. I had not even seen a trailer for it before Vega told me about it, and I was like, "What is this?" And he showed me a trailer for it, and I was like, "This looks incredible." It's got Chris Pine. Everyone loves Chris Pine. Legally, we all love Chris Pine. Everyone loves that guy. So I was like, "How did I miss this?" And then I see the movie. Incredible. One of the most tense sequences of all time. I won't spoil it for you. The car sequence. There's a police checkpoint car sequence. If you're not on the edge of your seat, like holding your breath, I mean, come on. I will say the one good thing about the tragedy of more people not seeing Hell or High Water is that it snowballed to us getting Yellowstone, one of the best television shows on television currently. Without Hell or High Water, we don't get Yellowstone. And I wish it had been more successful. We all want our team to be even more successful. I just wish more people would see this movie, because if it was more successful, more people, it would be airing more. And
well, it had a budget of $12 million. It made only $38 million, so it did cover its money and that to that degree. But you're right, for the amount of the direction, the stars here, the dialogue itself, the movie, the cinematography, everything in this film is what you would call grade A. You wouldn't watch this film and go, well, that's wrong. Oh, they rolled the camera to the wrong side on this one to try to show this height differential between the. None of that. There's none of that. When you watch the film, you're literally going, oh shit, I'm rooting for Jeff Bridges, the Texas Ranger, and the lore of all that. But I'm also kind of rooting for Chris Pine over here, and hopefully him and Ben Foster can get together. And then just the dialogue and the face-off.
It's outstanding.
It's outstanding.
Like I said, I've got nothing but praise for that film. And like I said, the most recent one, and I had this flashback, was I'm hearing about The Last Duel with I keep calling him Kylo Ren. That guy's an amazing actor. I forget his name.
Adam Driver.
Adam Driver, incredible actor, and everyone's saying this is like Oscar nomination. Then you've got Matt Damon in the movie. Everyone's saying how great this movie is, and everyone's also saying, yeah, no one watched it. And I'm getting that exact flashback when Hell or High Water came out. So it's a real shame. And I guess it's just one of those things where it's just like, not every movie can be number one.
But that's okay. I mean, like I said, this is about giving people a good movie. So who cares what everybody else thinks? I'm going to give you a good movie. And if I tell you it's a good movie, 9 times out of 10, because I don't like the BS stuff. And if I know the person, I know. So if you get this movie, if you watch this movie, guarantee you, write me if you think this movie sucks. Because I'd love to hear that.
I want to hear.
I would love to hear the arguments you'd make there. But for that, let's go ahead and jump into our shout out. So Mike, who are you shouting out?
My mom, dad. Hey, how's it going? I always shout out to my employer, Keith's Comics, and my manager, Jesus. Hey, how's it going, guys? And just you guys, thank y'all for being with us. It's always fun chatting and hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, you bet, man. Awesome. How about you, K-Zach?
All right, so I do want to go ahead and shout out here everyone on DallasOnAir.com. But what I really need to shout out at this time of year, it is Christmas time, and the owners of our station, Jansen, Ray, and Katchinsky, they do a special thing called a Very Spidey Christmas. They go out into some of the underprivileged neighborhoods here in Dallas, and they give out toys to kids on Christmas dressed as Spider-Man, Spider-Girl. Please go to www.averysspideychristmas.com. Find out how to donate. There, we've got a couple of toy drops and things like that. It is a really important time for us to make sure that kids across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex have a very wonderful Christmas. So please, please, please give to these guys. Help us give these kids a wonderful Christmas. It's just that time of year where, like I said, we like to gift films, but we really like to gift Christmas to kids who really, really need it. So please, 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 please show your love for those guys and give to averysspideychristmas.com. And of course, stay tuned to everything right here in DallasOnAir.com, because we got a little something for everyone. Check out the Rant Pit Live with me and Cole Houston, where we talk Star Wars, I Love Toys, where we talk toy collecting. Check out Figments Young Explain Mysteries podcast with Eddie and Colleen Medina. Check out Fan and Wife, also with Eddie and Colleen. Check out Best for Business. Check out Say Something. Check out all the great stuff right here in DallasOnAir.com. We've got something for you.
Yes, yes, and I would like to give my shout outs to some folks that have been watching us for a pretty good while. So Brandy and Barry Austin, we thank you for your viewage and that you continue to view. Sean Presley, Lauren Wiedauer, Tristan Frazier, Harry Thomas, who's also a YouTuber, Prim, who was on here earlier today connecting with us, Freddie, who's also a YouTuber who was on a couple weeks back helping us talk about horror movies, Daniel Mesa, of course, the film samurai himself, Carlos Salinas, and then Cole Houston, Eddie Medina, Stephanie Crane. And so with that, we are on our way out. I'll just tell you that don't miss next show. It's the 26th, so it's the day after Christmas. Make sure after you've opened all your gifts, you tune in because we are going to talk about the best movies, TV series, whatever that we watched in 2021, and we're going to talk about what were the worst attempts that were made in 2021. And then, of course, in our first show of the new year, we will talk about what we're looking forward to in 2022. But with that, this is the Fulfillment Crew saying, we're out.